Welcome to Marathon Champions, the podcast where running legends Benji Durden, Bill Rogers, and Ron Tabb share their timeless wisdom on marathon training and inspire listeners with their wealth of experience. These champions continue to impact the running world today.
Jack, what was your early competitive life like?
Well, let me see. No, I was a walk-on in college. I showed up at the University of Arizona track coach office as a mid-year second semester freshman. It was my first semester, and my Chuck Taylor high-top Converse basketball shoes, and said, "I'm Joe Schmo from Pennsylvania. I want to go out for your track team." And of course, he let me run with the guys. It was spring track starting, even though I was first semester, and he let me train with them, but he didn't give me a locker, didn't give me anything, right? And so but the guys were great. They welcomed me. They, took me out, showed me the ropes. We had to run a 3 mile road run down to a big park that they trained on. And I said, 3 miles on the pavement, won't we get shin splints? I mean, I was pretty ignorant about it. I played football in the fall, basketball in the winter, and ran track in the spring, and I was better at track than the other sports. But no, I was as far from any kind of a prodigy as you could get, but just kept working my way up. And by the time I ran that marathon, as I said, number one, for what I did, it was successful. I was winning a lot of the races in the DC area, but it was still small potatoes compared to what was going on in the national scene even back then. But yeah, we just keep showing up and just keep showing up, right? And keep improving little by little. I mean, Bill tells the same story very, very well in his book about all of a sudden. But Bill, you two had kind of of the real breakthrough race in '75 when you got third at the World Cross Country,
Yes.
and then won Boston shortly thereafter. And that was light years ahead of what you had accomplished up to that point, right?
And I
Same for
think
me.
everyone makes improvements every year.
Hmm.
You go from one year, the next year, it's a cardio sport, and up here too. And if you
Yeah.
have support, if you've got a brother, like I had a brother who ran with me and a best friend on our cross country team at Newington High School. There was no girls team. It was backwards, but it was the first year ever for the guys even. So this
Mm.
sport has evolved tremendously during our lifetimes, is what I'm saying, sort of.
Yeah.
And I think the future is bright, though I think we had a unique space, where I'm kind of sad that you can't see anyone win except for an altitude-born athlete, it seems today, in distance running. And that cuts out a huge chunk of the world's population, I think about 90% or more.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if that's the only reason why those people are winning. It has kind of evolved into that. But those who were not born at altitude, most of them went to altitude to train. You didn't, Bill, but most everybody. Ron, you didn't. You did most of your training there in Eugene. Is that correct for most of your
Yeah,
pro career?
most of it was
Yeah,
us.
yeah. Benji went to
Did you-
Boulder though. If I
No,
had to do
no,
over again.
I came to Boulder at the end of my career. I trained all my good years were in the Atlanta area. Although you could argue that the heat training I did
That's
was
right.
arguably like altitude training. I mean, Dr. Dave Martin said it was. So
No, yeah, I used to wear those double sweats too. So exactly. But let's posit it this way, if we may. If we had it to do over again, I read a great book recently titled "The Power of Regret," right? Looking back over our past lives and wanting to change things. And the only thing we know for sure is things would be different. We think they would be better, right? We'd be happier, we'd be richer, we'd be whatever, but whatever metric you use to measure the quality of your life. But the only thing we know is they'd be different. So it doesn't behoove us necessarily to change any of it. But if we could, in terms of our professional running careers, what would I go to altitude? Absolutely. If I had the opportunity, yeah, knowing what I know now, which we didn't know then.
well, I mean, I guess the question I would ask is if you were doing it back when if you would go back in time rather than do it now, where would you go? I mean, a lot of the altitude training areas now that the Americans get to use are not, we're not there. Not, I know Frank and Galloway and Bachelor, they went to Vail and they kind of built a place to run. I mean, Vail is, I've run in Vail and there's not a lot of easy places to get in non-hill running. So you'd have to think about, okay, where do I go to train? Because it was not a thing to do. But
Did
they,
they, that was a training camp though, right? Didn't they live in Boulder or at least
no, no,
shorter?
no, no. They went. Boulder wasn't yet on the scene.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
Okay.
Boulder came later. The Vale scene, they just ran up and down in the Vale Valley, and then they do some hill work going
Hmm.
up the hills there. But I think there was a rich guy there that, had kind of put them up. But yeah, we'd have to develop our own system because, now it's, they go to, Flagstaff, they go to Utah, they come here. There's a whole bunch of people come to Boulder. Let's talk about the 68, where they knew Mexico City was going to be. So they built this track in the mountains there in California. And when the games were over, they took the track away.
Well,
I've heard,
that was the start of real exercise science as we know it today.
yeah,
Started looking at, the effects of altitude on performance, and they had, still a pretty good idea what was going to
but
happen in
there
terms.
are videos of I think it was Jack Daniels on a vehicle beside them taking gas bag collection so he could see what was going on. But
Right.
my
Yeah.
point about they took the track away, there weren't many tracks at altitude.
Oh,
And
good point. Yeah.
so, I hardly ever ran on the track, but I could do the same kind of work on the road. But you had to, if you're altitude, you need to have places where you can run some flat, fast road stuff. And you
Yeah.
also, if you're going to do altitude, you need to be near an airport so you can get to races because
Hmm.
racing is part of the program. You got to have, people don't race enough these days, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
But of
Good
course, when
point.
you've got a big group of guys, you can simulate a race. I've played this game in my mind a lot too, and generally I don't think about going to altitude. I just think about, okay, what would I've changed in training and what would I've done differently in a given race, and then also
Yeah.
I get out the magic wand and I just make things magically happen.
Once when we do that and kind of reflect on the what life would be like for us if we'd done things a little differently, and we can't help but do that. Again, I think that's kind of part of the human condition. I think what keeps me from going too deep into that regret cave is all the things that I have in my life now that are really working and are of value to me, I wouldn't have.
Yeah,
I'd have different things that might fulfill those roles, but I wouldn't have what I have now. And so
yeah, our lives would have been different to the point that it. Who knows? I mean,
might be
it would have
dead.
been a bad outcome as opposed to the outcomes we have. I think
Precisely. Yeah.
all four of us have had, we're in good situations right now.
Yeah, exactly. We've ostensibly won the lottery of life. I mean, you can say that for the vast majority of Americans across when you look at the global spectrum, and
Yeah.
in Western society, Europeans as well. I mean, there are a lot of people who were born in just life is real hard their entire lives, right? A lot of
Yeah.
people, and so yeah, that's why I say we in many senses we've kind of won the lottery. But so if we don't have something to be miserable about, we kind of create it
We
in
generate
our own
misery.
minds.
I think the first time we may have raced each other may have been the 78. No, actually, I ran against you at 78, didn't know you were there at Boston, but the 78 Jacksonville River Run. I guess
All
that was
right.
actually before Boston.
I
And
remember it. Yeah, you zipped by me down the backside of Hart. I was second to Bill at that point at about
mm,
8.5 miles or something. It was a 15K.
Hartbridge.
And then Benji comes roaring by me and Ken Meisner comes roaring by me. They were together chasing each other. And I knew I had Boston coming. I couldn't have stayed with you anyway, but once I mean, you went by with such veracity that I said, no, I'm just going to stay here where I am.
well, I didn't know that I couldn't run that well. I mean, I was always a very good downhill runner, and coming down the
Yeah.
Hart Bridge, I knew that I had to go there. We had that long stretch once we get down to the finish line, going by the coffee plant, which I hated going by because the strong smell of coffee always made me kind of nauseous.
Yeah. The landing in Jacksonville is no longer there. But yeah, that was a great race. And, Buck Fannin, of course, brought us all in. And his son now, Richard Fannin, for many years was involved with the
Yep,
race, bringing in the elite athletes. And Doug Allred,
right.
now as race director, he used to come up here to the Cape because his wife's family I think they may still have property. They may have sold it now. But he'd come up to the Cape early summer every year, and he and I'd get together and play some golf out on the Cape. And then I'd play golf with him down Jacksonville after the race. If he had, not when I was racing, long, long after that. But we have other Jacksonville connections and ties. So, but anyway, it's been great to still have some living dimensions of our experiences way back then. And I was down Jacksonville November before last for an event, a fundraising event that grew legs, and the guy who created that came up and ran on our Dana-Farber marathon team, ran Boston that year, raised a lot of money, and Richard, we still stay in touch. So, and Buck, his dad, is still, you probably know, he's still alive and
Yep.
doing well as far as I know. So it's nice to have all that still.
It was
Right.
a big road race, and they're still cranking out.
Oh yeah, the race is still a big deal, and had a new American record this year at the race. Of course,
Mm.
it wasn't a lot of different. I still think that the previous record was probably a higher quality because it was run back with old shoes.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Was that Todd Williams?
uh, Todd Williams.
Todd
Yeah,
Williams. It was the American
brilliant
record, I
race.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was an incredible time back when he ran it. But
Oh
Because
yeah.
Meb Keflezighi ran that race a number of times, but even he couldn't break Todd's record.
no,
Mm.
it was just an unbelievably fast time. I can't remember what it was, but it was really good.
Yeah.
Kind of
42. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't remember what
Low
his time was.
42s, I think,
uh,
if I remember right.
Yeah.
off the charts.
Yeah.
So
So
I'm looking at the Montreal Marathon that Jack, you and I and Bill ran in
mhm.
79. And what is kind of this notable, they only had 36 finishers. Was that not a people's race, or was that just an invite?
No, I thought it was a people's race. It was in concert with the World Cup
World
track meet,
Cup,
but it
right.
wasn't the World Cup marathon. So I thought it was part of the Montreal Marathon, um, and a larger group. So I'm wondering if the results you're looking at was maybe just the invited
Well, yeah,
group.
I mean, are you looking at the road racing statisticians page?
Yes.
They don't put complete
ARR.
results. They just limit. If you go back to that 78 river run that Jack and I ran, we're not even listed. They only list Bill. And for some
Oh,
reason,
is that right?
that's the only result they got. Um,
Oh, okay.
and so they get results.
So it was a people's race.
Yeah,
I think
I'm
that was a
Yeah,
people's
yeah.
race.
yeah.
So I have fond memories of that race and for many ways. I was chasing you, Ron, right up to the finish line. I think we finished on a grass strip or something, right? And was I right behind you? How close was I to you?
Uh,
It was a handful of seconds, I think. Less than 30.
that was
What year was that?
Well, that was
70.
79. And anyway, so
That
what
was
happened?
I was 2:17:14, and you were 2:17:9, so 15 seconds.
Okay. So
But I thought Bill dropped out, but Bill actually finished. Ran
he fit
2:20.
Yeah, it was hot. And what happened at that race, it
Yeah.
was crazy. So we're standing at the starting line and 10 minutes before the start, and I drop a small handful of sugar pills and take a big slug of Coca-Cola. Why I did that, I have no idea. I just thought I was going to get myself juiced for the race, right? This was legal performance enhancing drugs,
Yeah,
sugar
yeah.
and
Yeah.
caffeine, right? So I did that. And if you remember, Ron, they delayed the start of the race for 20 some minutes, maybe a half hour, because there
That's
was a bridge up.
another reason to think it was a people's race.
Exactly. And so we're standing around and I have a big insulin dump because I had just poured a bunch of sugar in my system. By the time
Oh,
they started us, I was almost passing out, literally. So we start running. I was in pretty good shape. Was getting ready for Boston. My PR at Boston was 78 the year before. I was getting ready for Boston. I moved up here, getting ready for Boston 79. And I cracked my tibia, so I had a stress fracture and didn't get to run Boston. So I healed, recovered from that, was getting myself back. So I was in pretty good shape, and I thought, I was hoping to be, in the hunt a little bit in that race. But now I'm crashing and burning. I'm running. I'm in the back of the pack of invited athletes, and it's all I can do to keep myself going. I'm looking for a place to drop out. Some of my siblings and friends have been up there from the Boston area and Pennsylvania, where I'm from, watching and cheering us on. The whole second half of the race, if you remember, went on to Man in His Island because Man in
yeah.
His Island had been the
Motor.
World's Fair.
Yeah.
So the whole second half of the race kept doing loops, so everyone could see you 3, 4 times. And by the time we got on that island, I'm dead, and my second my final goal, not even my secondary goal, was thought, okay, well, at least I'll get my Olympic trials qualifying time in, which again had to run up, we had to run under 220. So for the 80 trials, and this is 79. So oh my God, okay, let me at least get a sub 220 out of this thing. And I got to the halfway point in 110, and I'm still dead. I'm like, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to be able to run another 110. But I just kept showing up, looking for a place to drop, couldn't find a good place. Finally, my system stabilized, and I start picking up, and now all of a sudden I'm feeling good again. And I'd been running so slow relative to what my body was ready for that I started picking it up because it was hot. Guys like Rogers and Tom Fleming started to drop. I passed both those guys, and boom, I ran 3 minute negative splits, ran at 217, and I
I
saw
just remember
you.
it was hot. It was nasty up there
It
that
was,
meeting.
and somebody I
Yeah,
can't remember when
I don't
somebody
know.
told me.
Montreal, why would it be hot? But I ran Montreal in 82 and it was really hot that year too.
Hey, you don't think of Montreal as being hot, but
Yeah.
I know, yeah,
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
supposed to be the day we were there.
it was crazy. Yeah,
Well, the
I
year I
remember.
ran,
I
it was
didn't.
really hot, and I won by about a minute and a half because it was so hot, and I was a heat runner.
What year, Benji?
Yeah,
82.
82, yeah,
82, yeah. What did you run there for your win? 14, was it?
13.
13, 13.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, nice race.
2:13:22, and second place was 2:14:50.
Who was that?
Uh, Rizard,
Oh,
Cup,
Marchak from Poland.
no, no, his last name was Kobazak. He's
Oh,
from Poland. It
okay.
was a different Polish athlete,
Okay. But yeah, Richard.
Richard.
Yeah, yeah.
And let's see who else would you might know. Giappoli Misano from Italy was third in 2:15:05.
Mm-hmm.
Tanzanian Leonard Leogard Martin from Tanzania was
I
2:15:16.
remember his name. Yeah.
Gianni Poli was 2:15:38.
Oh.
John Brennan. I mean, and I was not leading until about, I guess, about 20K. I was, it was just hot. I was just taking my time, and
Mm-hmm.
there was like three Tanzanians that took off. And I remember I was running alongside of Jerome Drayton.
Oh, Drum
From
Drayton.
Drayton.
Oh,
Yeah.
Drayton. Oh,
And
he
we're
was,
running
yeah.
along together, and I turned to him and said, "We can't let the Tanzanians get too far ahead of us." And he looked at me like I was crazy because it was hot. Then I said, "Okay, I got to go," and I took off and I caught him, and that was it. Like 20, 22, 23K, the race was over.
Well, they must have brought. I'm looking at this list from '79, Jack, and they had a pretty. I mean, it's a pretty impressive group. Alcher was there, Chattel was there, Kevin Ryan, Ian Thompson, Brian Maxwell, Don Howison, had Bill there,
Mhm.
Fleming. I mean, there was. So they must have really spent some money on bringing people in. So,
Yeah, no, it was again, and because I think, well, I don't know, they had a strong field there in '82. So the Serge Arsenault, do you remember him? He was the race
Yeah,
Serge,
director,
yeah,
yeah.
is he
and
still
and
alive?
He was
sorry,
invited me too.
he was involved with Formula One racing, and but
Well,
he showed
wasn't
up.
part of that course on the Formula One racing track? Wasn't part of that course?
The
Like
Uh,
a
finish,
part
the
of that
finish of
course?
in 82 was on the course. I was running probably 2:11 pace when I hit
That
and,
track?
all the twists and turns and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it was tough finishing on that.
well, maybe that was part of the island that we were on, in
Yeah.
Montreal, the
Well, we
Mannins
finished
Island.
out there. And Billy did not drop out. He was 2:22
Yeah, that's what I
Oh
was
yeah,
saying. He didn't. I thought he had dropped out, and no, he ended up finishing.
and
that was
Tom
one of the few
Fleming was
hot
back
ones.
down there 2:24.
Who?
Tom Fleming, you've mentioned
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah. No,
I
I
didn't
remember.
realize Tom was in that race.
Ron
Yeah.
Hill was
On
2:25.
Hill, yeah, yeah,
I
he's in
remember
there.
I had it's nice now given the circumstances that I described to you of passing all those guys.
Yeah, yeah.
It felt real good to go by
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was one of those crazy races. But
Who's
oh my
Keith?
God, I remember the meals.
Who was Keith Brown? Do you guys know who Keith Brown is
No,
or what?
no, I don't
Keith
know.
Brown.
Don't know that name.
Yeah, because he's from the U.S. Ran 218. I don't recognize the
Who won
name.
that race? I forget now.
Uh,
Chevel?
Balcha from Ethiopia.
Oh, okay.
He was a,
Kennedy,
he's a good runner.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
He didn't win it he won by about 6 seconds. David Shelton.
Seconds, yeah.
I was Chettle. Yeah, so it was Chettle going back to that choice marathon in Auckland. It was I think it was Chettle and Franco Fava were the two guys. Am I right on that?
I'll check here in just a second if I can find it.
Chattel won that race.
Oh, it was Chettle. Okay, yeah. And Franco Fava.
Yeah.
Fava had this heart condition.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, it was AFib or something. And all of a sudden, he'd been in the middle of a race running 5-minute pace for 20 miles in a marathon, and his heart would start to race, and he'd have to literally stop. I think I don't know if it had happened to him in that choice race, but I was in a couple
pretty
other
impressive build. That's a really impressive build at that race.
Yeah, no, it was.
Ken Thompson was third. Kevin Ryan fourth.
Kevin Ryan.
Jack Foster fifth. Chris Stewart sixth.
Yeah, it was. I wasn't supremely fit, but I kind of showed up and did what I could. But it was the real novelty of that. The times, it being such a short course, makes for a great story now.
And we heard about it. Those of us back in the States, we heard about it, and we all knew that there's something wrong with this picture, but it didn't come up. The time was just unbelievable.
Here's how did meet directors learn how to get a hold of? I mean, we didn't have media. Think about that. I mean, I got invitations from what the heck are they getting my telephone number and my address? Invites. Isn't like we had the internet.
Right? No,
I got things. People knew I worked at the Fidipodes, and so sometimes they call
invitation there.
They call up the store and try to find me, and I get in touch that way.
Ron, I think of that on a lot of different occasions in life. Like, how did we ever communicate with each other before the internet to do international travel? I don't remember.
Phone calls, you had to pay to call long distance, so it wasn't like you would make.
And it was expensive.
Yeah, it wasn't cheap.
Exactly.
I have some correspondence, that I've saved where you write it out. And you get a stamp and you send it off. That's how I've got invitations from races, and that's how it was done. I got a letter, I wrote them back.
Well, last week I went to listen to Rick Atkinson, who's writing his second trilogy on the American Revolution. This one, and he's the historian who opens and closes the 6-part Ken Burns series called The American Revolution, which will be on PBS this coming November. Anyway, so Atkinson's he's telling us all these stories about how he came to write the book and get into history, and then telling us details of what happened during Washington's crossing in Delaware, and how it started here in Concord and Lexington, where I live, and we're in Boston. It always happens Marathon weekend. That's Patriots Day up here because of it, to hallmark what happened then. We never get to participate because we're always in Boston for the marathon that weekend. But anyway, so much of it happened here this year being the 250th, and then so all this is happening, and my mind often goes to your question, Ron. How did they ever communicate with other bands in the Army and stuff and go back, send communications back? And it would take days just for riders to get to and fro, to send and relay the messages and stuff, let alone across the water.
It was with pigeons. I mean, you got to remember that they laugh, but they had messenger pigeons, and that was something the military. They had teams of pigeons.
Well, in World War II they did, but I didn't.
No, they did. Even back then,
passenger pigeons, pigeons back. Oh, I didn't
know passenger
that.
Pigeons was a different thing. That was the one that we eliminated, made extinct.
Well, yeah, I mean, but the
passenger pigeons.
Game of Thrones, right? They use pigeons.
Yeah.
We've never discussed this before in any of our podcasts. How did people get a hold of us? I mean,
we did once, but yeah, it was catch as catch can. I mean, sometimes they would know another race director and had known we'd run their race, and they'd figure out how to find us that way. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of races I wished I'd run, but I didn't know who to talk to, and
exactly, yeah.
And I never got invited, and I never found out how to get invited.
Okay, so Benji, you ran China.
Yeah.
You ran Beijing.
Yeah.
How'd they get a hold of us?
Hey, I don't know. I
think about that.
Oh, actually, Nike, I
I
think,
mean, not only is the language
yeah,
barrier,
Amy's reminding me that we got invited via Nike, and because they arranged a lot of the travel, getting it.
oh, it was through Nike.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that was a weird trip. You had to fly. I think we flew to San Francisco, didn't we, to get the
You had to go to San Francisco to get your visa.
yeah to get a visa.
Yeah.
You barely got there.
Yeah, you barely managed to make it.
What year was
Yeah.
that?
That was
84.
80. No, it wasn't 84. It had to be 85 because we went from
It had to be
it was
84.
84 because we came from Eugene. That's right.
Yeah, I wonder if some Americans went over prior to that because I would not have gotten invited in '85. I hadn't put up any mark in a couple of years. But I did get invited to China. I never went, and I think that everything kind of fell apart now. And I don't remember all the details, but I was slated to go, and I
a
don't
very
know.
interesting. It was a very interesting trip.
I'll bet.
Bill Rogers and Jerry Bjorklund and I went together in '83,
Mhm.
and then Benji, it was you and were
Yeah, I think.
there any
Yeah,
other
it was
Americans in there?
Beardsley, I think, was with us.
Dick went in '84. Sure.
Yeah, I think so. I'm looking for it. Hang on.
It was 80.
And Marty Freilich was there the next year.
Yeah, Marty. Yeah, that was.
But yeah, and getting an invitation to a race like that, where you had to do a lot of stuff to just get there.
Oh my God, I can't imagine. Benji,
Well,
did either of you guys ever go to Ome, that 30K race in Japan
I did.
from
No,
Yeah.
I wish I had, but no.
Yeah, I
You
did
run.
that one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that was, yeah, boy, they lay out the red carpet, and then they
Boy,
probably did in
they
China too.
really do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know it. It was my first real international trip outside of.
Oh, was
I've
it?
been to Japan was the first trip I took outside. I mean, I've been to Canada.
And that was when you went in '81.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
Bill
great.
was
I still
Bill-
go. I go to Japan.
Yeah,
Yeah, Bill was on that trip. Well, Bill, I traveled a lot with Bill.
Yeah, I take that team to Japan every year now, so it's a golden opportunity to go over and I mean, I take my golf clubs now, and once the race is over and the athletes come home, I stay in Japan with my friends and we play golf, and it's a whole different reality over there. But yeah, what another golden opportunity that running has created.
yeah. I mean,
Um,
I've been to Russia, I've been to China. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, I wouldn't have done this just on my own.
exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, we were at a party a few years back here, uh, a millionaire's house in Boulder, and it's a bunch of runners, and
Yeah,
the millionaire was being coached by, I think it was Platches was coaching her, and I'm standing there with Platches looking at all the opulence and thinking, and knowing Mark's history, I mean, he came from dirt basically, and
yeah,
and I'm saying to him, here we are in this environment here in Boulder, where it's a very rich society in many ways. We're here because we could run fast.
yeah, yeah. It opened up a lot of doors.
Yeah, and at times I wonder, why is it that because we ran fast we deserve it? But I can't argue with it. It just
Right. The world's a funny, funny place. The
yeah,
things that get rewarded. I mean, look at the rewards now for guys who can hit a baseball or
let's
swing a
throw at
club.
baseball. I mean, it's amazing and then you look at guys that because they're 7 feet tall and can run down a court real fast and dunk, and
Well, that's like what Bill says. And I bring that up actually, guys, because he laments the fact that the athletes who were born at altitude have an unfair advantage. And I said, well, so what? We should separate them out and make them have their own races. It's like the 7 foot tall person who goes into basketball. Do they have an unfair advantage? Well, yeah, but I mean, what can we do about it? You
I mean,
can't legislate
we
that
actually
out.
had unfair advantages too, in that we could run faster than 99% of the population.
Exactly, right.
And
It's
and
genes and
it's
then what you
genes,
do with them.
I mean, yeah, we trained and we put in the time, but if we didn't have the genetics, I mean, I know people that put in more time than me, but they didn't have the genetics.
Well, yeah. I mean, Malcolm Gladwell addresses that in his book. I'm blanking on the book now. The three components that you need, and he popularized this notion of 10,000 hours of purposeful practice,
Yeah,
and then the other two components are some DNA, right, and
right.
certain genetic predisposition to being good at whatever it is that you're pursuing. Then you do the 10,000 hours of purposeful practice, and then goes to the third component is what you guys addressed earlier is opportunity.
Yep.
Without the races, in our case, but if the opportunity is not there, you can have all the talent in the world and have trained and trained and trained, but you have no place to really showcase it. It's not going to end up meaning anything. So,
Yeah.
um,
What would you say your best race was other than the marathon?
other than the marathon,
I mean, your best non-marathon race.
yeah. Well, one that stands out is a 10 miler I ran in Germany. It was a 2 mile loops through a little town, and it was a whole evening of running festivities. And they started with youth races about 8 in the evening, and every hour they had a new race. And our race was the championship race, and it started at midnight. And the whole town was out, fireworks, oompa bands, people banging pans, the whole thing. This is from 12 to 1 o'clock in the morning. And I was over there. The only reason I was in Germany over there was Pan Am offered a $99 round trip standby ticket. And I had not been to Europe before. This was 78, summer of 78. So, and I had just come off my PR at Boston and gone out and run Cascade runoff. And so I was in great shape, and I said, I've got to take advantage of this. So I went over there, ended up running into John McGrath, who was the original publisher of New England Runner magazine,
Right.
his wife, Nancy Clark.
Yeah.
So I knew John, and just coincidentally, he was going over there. So I flew to Amsterdam and was in that area. And he said, no, come over to Germany, and you can hang out with us. And I know the race director of this race, this 10-mile race called Die Nacht von Borkelshausen, the night of Borkelshausen, which is the name of the town. So sure enough, I go over and chase him down. Several years earlier, when I was at Georgetown, a German runner had come over to Georgetown, and he knew a Georgetown alum, ran with us, and for about a week. And he said, any of you guys ever come to Germany, you have a place to stay. Well, again, going back to we talked, how the hell did I ever chase him down, find him without internet or email or anything? I have no idea. I can't begin to tell you, but I found him. And so I ended up in Germany for 3 months. And I ran that race, Benji, the Nacht von Borkenshausen. I didn't, the guy's leading me on a bike, and I finally took the lead. And he's yelling splits at me in German, yelling instructions and everything. I didn't speak any German, so I didn't know what the hell I just kept running. And I ran, I had 48 something, so I had a good time, and I was still in
48-29.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay. So and then so I stayed for 3 months. And so I went to this German runners who I met at Georgetown, found him. He lived in not a small town, but Darmstadt, which is right outside of Frankfurt. Charlotte Teska, who won Boston's from there. Klaus Peter Hillenbrand, who won dove across the finish line to get silver in the 72 5,000. Remember that? There's a big statue of him. He lived in Darmstadt.
That was a 76, but yeah.
Oh, 76, excuse me, right. Thanks. So, but all these distance runners lived and trained in, a lot of them lived and trained in Darmstadt. So I hooked up with these guys, started training with them, and they had it was the land of Puma and Adidas. Well, and Burtin, which made the Lydiard shoe, beautiful handcrafted shoes. But these buddies of mine were wearing neon colored Nike shoes. And Nike wasn't anywhere in Europe. It was just getting started, 78. So I said, where did you get these Nike shoes? And they said, there's an American down in Heidelberg who sells import stuff for the American military, tennis and golf and jogging shoes, they called them. So I said, and I'd been chatting with Nike about maybe a contract with them after, the runoff. So anyway, he said, we went down. I said, I have to go down and get some shoes from him and convince him to give me a couple pair. And I said, I'll get Nike USA to replenish your supply for these. And he ended up hiring us. He said, I'm trying to sell Nikes to the civilian population here in Germany, but I can't break through Adidas. So he hired me and my German running friends, and we basically got Nike started in Germany for 3 months. We'd go to all the track meets. They knew all the athletes, and they were given a little bit of money on the side and a free pair of shoes. And that was starting to crack the Adidas and Puma egg in Europe. And then that friend of mine, I finally came back to the States, and my friend got hired by Nike and worked for them. And this guy was their main guy in Germany for the next couple years. And then finally, they needed to grow beyond his capacity to really handle it all. So they hired some bigger agency to be their distribution center in Germany. And then they finally hooked up with Great Britain, who was doing their thing. Nike was doing their thing in Great Britain, but there was nothing on the mainland in Europe for Nike other than this little seed in Germany. So that was really how Nike got started over there. Very interesting to have been part of that.
That's a great story.
Oh, it was amazing. So we had a big reunion in 2018, was the 40th anniversary of my summer there. So I stayed in touch with all these German buddies. And so I reached out and said, "Hey guys, we have to have a reunion. It's the 40th year coming up. How can we all get together?" And they said, "Well, we're all going to the World Championships in Berlin in September of 2018. I said, "I'm there." So sure enough, I flew over to Germany and we had this fabulous reunion. Just about everybody was there. Those guys, by the way, took me over to Prague, and Czechoslovakia was still behind the Iron Curtain. So we somehow got visas, went over there. We went over to run what was called the Ruta Pravo, and that was the communist newspaper in Prague. And they sponsored a big cross-country race. And I had a big, beautiful brandy snifter stein with Ruta Pravo etched into it. Somehow I've lost that thing. But it was an amazing race, and kind of all of Europe was there, right? All these luminaries and stuff. I mean, I got smoked, absolutely smoked. But I remember it was supposed to be a road race. And we start out, and boom, all of a sudden, guys are cutting across, supposed to run around the city park. And it was just all ran.
They just go through, the shortest distance.
Exactly, all chaos. So you guys have both seen that over
Yeah,
there
I mean,
too, so.
the Amsterdam Marathon, the year that Nibor ran really, really fast. You see the video, and he's taking huge tangents every time there's a chance. He's leaving the road, and it's sort of, yeah, he didn't run that fast.
He wouldn't run in the heat either. Remember, he bailed on a couple races he was supposed to run, and it was hot. So Bill would at least start, but he didn't like the heat either.
Yeah. Well, we probably should let you go and have other activities today.
Okay, guys, take care. Have a great weekend.
All right, everyone.
Okay.
Talk to you later. Take care.
Ciao.